Hello. Hello, I'm Ayanda Crispin, Pillars Event Coordinator. We are excited to present a full program to you over the next 75 minutes. To keep our program moving along, we are using a webinar format. We'd like to get you warmed up by asking you to please participate in a poll. Please select your responses so you and your fellow participants can have a sense of who is in our virtual room today. All right, thank you, Lisa. In this webinar format, you are welcome to share your comments or your enthusiasm in the chat. If you have a question or on what you're seeing and hearing today, please click on our Q&A icon to ask it. We will do our best to field questions as we go. If we're unable to do so, we'll follow up with you via email after the event. Please do note that we will be recording today's events to share with others who are unable to attend today. When our report to the community concludes at 8:45, you'll instantly see a link to a survey. We ask you please consider taking a minute or two to complete it. Thank you so much for your participation today and enjoy our Pillars report to the community. Thank you. With that said, I would like to welcome Tom Wieser, our board president.
Good morning, and thank you, Yanda. And thanks to you, the Pillars donors, funders, partners, volunteers, staff, and board for joining us this morning. My name is Tom Wieser, and I am the president of the Pillars Board of Directors, and I am also the chief nursing officer and vice president for quality at the Holy Family Memorial Hospital. I have been privileged to be a part of this team here at Pillars for the past 8 years. We are proud that we provide not only shelter, but also support and solutions to address our housing needs in the community. And I have never been more proud to be associated with an organization that I have been with Pillars this past year. Our frontline staff has been nothing short of heroic. Our leadership team performed with grace under fire through this great pandemic, performing under pressure, and you, our community, that have supported our clients every step of the way, and we want to thank each and every one of you. This morning, you're going to get a sense of the grit, the innovation, and the dedication the Pillars team has had of the Pillars team as our time together unfolds. And you will also understand more fully that the Pillars team includes you. Your gifts of time, partnership, smarts, and yes, money have made the Pillars team accomplishments possible through an extraordinary year. My hope is that you will leave this virtual gathering in just over an hour with a sense of gratitude for the role that you have played in bringing to life our mission, our vision, and that everyone in the Fox cities will have a place to call home.
Thanks, Tom. I'm Joe Mott, the Executive Director of Pillars, and I get to spend the next little bit of time with you doing a bit of a year in review for this report to the community, and I'm really happy to be able to do that. I think a good place for us to start, especially after Tom's introduction, is, and I'm trying to, nope, Lisa, I don't think I have control, so I'll let you advance the slides. So I really want to give a shout out to our board of directors. And you can see here everybody who has been involved with us kind of for the long haul, but certainly for the last year of being able to look at where are we, what do we need to do, and how do we make that happen, and how do we do that in the kind of the smartest, most effective way, and in a way that is takes care of the short-term needs and builds a long-term strategy. So these are all of the glamour shots. I'll give you an action shot as much as action as we get. So this is what it looks like. This is a screen grab from our board meeting last week. And I know everybody on this call is certainly familiar with this. But you know, it is worth reflecting every once in a while of what a different way of working this is. So this used to be monthly in-person, right, meetings like we've all had, and now it's virtual. And I think it's been a year since we've seen people face to face. Nonetheless, like everybody, we've adapted, and we continue to have the good advice and support from the board as we go forward. So if we move to the next slide, the other early thank you that I'll get out there is to our leadership team. So I get the privilege of talking about what the last year has been like, and then we'll put some layers on that in terms of some special awards and things like that. But what you're seeing here is where the work really gets done. And as Tom said, this is a group that had grace under fire over the last year and you'll see, has really delivered some pretty extraordinary results in a very trying environment. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this team and how confident I am in this team going forward. And we'll come back to this and talk about them a little bit more, but I wanted to get that out there so you know and can put a face to a name of who's doing the work that we're going to be talking about now. So let's look at the year that was COVID and the year that was 2020 for us. Now, this is a lot for one slide. I don't expect you to read it, be able to read all of it, but I wanted to point this out. And what you may have in your mailbox or will be coming in the next day or two is our annual report. And this little 8-page summary of the year, but dead center in this is this graphic, which I really like for a couple of reasons. This is your one-stop shop for what is Pillars. We took this and we said, what is the full continuum of services that we offer? And then we broke that down. What is that program? And all of the details about it. And I'll show you a close-up. But before I do that, also just a tip for anybody who hasn't done it, that square up in the right corner, I'd encourage you to, when you get this in the mail, just open up the camera on your phone and point it at that, and something magical will happen. It'll actually take you to a little 3-minute video overview of Pillars. So for everybody who has either some legacy relationship with one of the 3 agencies that was Pillars, and sometimes forgets what's all there, this graphic hopefully gives you the scope of what we do, and that video will also give you a little bit more insight into it. So this is our summary annual report to the community in terms of the work we do, the number of people we served, and the resources it takes. And just to give you a sense of what's there, maybe to whet your appetite a little bit more, here's just a zoom in on a part of that continuum, looking at 3 main program areas, in this case, supportive housing, our Ascend Young Adult program, and affordable housing. And you can see what we tried to do there is, what was the service level? What was the resource requirement in terms of money required to run that program, as well as staff, and then a little summary of the program. And as you can imagine, this chart in total, right, is our strategic plan. So even as you're around town and you see somebody standing at the stoplight by Walmart or in the pavilion at City Park, and you want to call somebody, or you have an idea of here's how we help, know that this is the big picture for us of, yes, now how do we decide strategically of these programs, where to invest and how to optimize to make sure that we are delivering the best, most efficient, most effective services for the Fox Cities community. Let's move on with some specifics for the year in review. You know, right from the beginning, and it was just about a year now, you know, we said, what's happening? Nobody really knew. Things were starting to shut down, of course. And we said, job one for us, and has continued to be throughout the last year, is deliver the mission. And you can see our mission statement at the bottom of this slide, but that was always, what do we have to do to deliver the mission? And if we could, there we go. I can't tell you how proud I am, and maybe a little surprised, we were able to continue all of the services on that previous chart throughout the year. And we knew they were important because we asked ourselves, what happens if any of those falls apart? What happens to the clients we serve, and what happens within this community if we can't continue to deliver services? So I'll dig in a little bit more on some of those things. Everything we did was about making sure that we were there, because as doors closed around town for good reasons everywhere, we knew that we did not have that option of closing our door. I think the other thing in doing that is we adapted to a changing environment. And as we all know, that environment changed from a lot of unknowns. And we got more information as we went, and everybody had to pivot and change as we went. You know, for us, that meant moving out of shelters for a while, because that was not the safest, healthiest place we could be. Pivoting our entire, not our entire, but 3/4 of our shelter operations to a local hotel to make sure that we could continue to deliver service and do that in a safe and effective way. And like everybody, right, figuring out what personal protective equipment was needed and what procedural changes did we need, and what happens when we needed to quarantine or isolate clients, and what happened when our staff got sick, and how did we flex our services, and a little bit more on that to come. And I'd say the other thing, you know, so we would talk about whatever it takes, right? If our goal is to continue to deliver our mission, continue to keep our doors open, we'll do whatever it takes to do that. And when you sit in a conference room and talk about who do we want to be and what are our values and what is the culture of this organization, that's a good discussion, and it's a fun. And then when you give it the test of reality, the test of fire, you find out if those were the right things. Well, one of the things that we talk about a lot, and Tom mentioned in his intro, is one of our corporate values is grit. And when that came on the table, when we were defining who we were, there was a lot of energy around that. Not only is it exemplified in so many of the clients we serve, the grit that they have to move through this episode of homelessness and onto something else, and the struggle and the difficulty with that. But we knew that that was our story too, of how do we continue to provide services, and for all of the reasons that they can be difficult to provide. So this was a year of grit for us, and I think it galvanized the values that we espouse, and especially that ability to stick in there, stay with it, and hang in there. So if we move ahead, the other thing I think that is helpful, maybe instructive or reflective, is to talk about 2020 in terms of bed nights. And I'll admit, I don't really like the term bed night. That sounds kind of clinical. It feels like we're filling out a chart. But it matters. But it matters a lot. I mean, how many times do you ask somebody, did you get a good night's sleep? Right? Because we know what that means. We know what that means for the next day, and we know what a bad night's sleep means for any of us, right? Trying to get through the next day as well as we can. When we throw some extra challenges on there about somebody who's experiencing homelessness or trying to resolve a housing situation, a night's sleep makes a big difference. So the three pictures here are a little bit of the continuum that we see. The first one in the upper left, that was actually a picture taken last week by our street outreach team in a downtown area early in the morning when they went out. And you can see there in the distance, 3 people who were sleeping in a hallway. That was their bed night, if you will. In the next picture to the right of that, you'll see both our old and our new at the adult shelter. So it was mats on the floor. We still have a couple, but over the last year, we were able to put bunk beds in, right? To do a lot of things, to give us a little bit more separation, a little bit more distance, a little healthier environment, but also a better bed night. And the folks who would stay there would say the shelter is a more peaceful place because I have my own space and I can get a good night's sleep. And then we'll cap that off with, this is a shot that I took just a couple of weeks ago at our new single room occupancy supportive housing program. This is the bedroom that somebody would move into moving out of shelter. on that next step of rebuilding their life and their experience to what they want it to be. So bed nights is not a great term, but what's behind it again, and it's really not as much maybe about where you were, but how you were, how you slept. So let me just share some things to put the magnitude of that on top of this. In crisis housing, that's at both of our shelters, our adult shelter on College Avenue, our adult and family shelter on Division Street. We had 36,143 bed nights over the past year. And that includes bed nights at the Clarion Hotel as well. It's 30 in our community, that's 36,000 times somebody didn't have another place that they could put their head down and relied on us and you to be able to provide for that, hoping that tomorrow is a better day. That's a massive number that gets lost. So what that means is on a day-by-day basis, that averages out to 99 people every single day who don't have another place to put their head down except maybe for that first picture up there. And that's certainly not the path to progress or success. The good news, that's crisis housing. That's the first step of that continuum. In our housing programs, supportive housing programs and affordable housing programs, we provided over 77,000 bed nights. So that is our solution to housing instability and episodes of homelessness, is to be able to get into safe, affordable, warm, quiet, healthy living environment. And we're doing that to the tune of 2x what we're seeing on the crisis side. And here's one that's a little harder to get your head around, but we also have a program that we call prevention and diversion. That is, we get upstream and we help people. We prevent an episode of homelessness, or we divert them from coming into shelter and keep them in a alternative, safe, stable place that is better for them than shelter. So this one becomes a little theoretical, because in that program over the last year, we served a total of 366 individuals. You can see there, half of them children. The success rate for that program, success defined as you do not enter shelter over the next year is the way we measure it, is over 90% success rate. So if we look at that program and roll that forward, that program provided about 120,000 good, safe bed nights for those folks who might have otherwise experienced homelessness. So bed nights is a big deal. A good night's sleep is a big deal. And what you can do with that to start your own next step on your own journey is a big deal. So
Joe, I'm gonna jump in here. We have a question in the chat that I hope you'll address for the audience, and that is, how do these numbers compare to other years? We've had a couple of folks raise that question.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I'm not following the chat, so I really appreciate that. Housing program, pretty stable. Prevention is still a new program for us, but that's fairly consistent. We've ramped up that program. In crisis last year, our number there was about 48,000. So one of the things that we saw this year was we're able to keep our programs open, but especially for the first 3 months of COVID, we did have to cap some of our services as we moved all individuals into a hotel setting, kept families at the adult shelter. And cap that. Now, the good news is our wait list also went down. So I think we saw a little bit of suppressed need in the community as everybody hunkered down a little bit. So the numbers are staggering. And honestly, we're grateful that they're about 20 and 25% lower than they were last year. So if we move forward, I think it's worth looking at. So in the last year, so what was different, and then we'll look at what was not different. So what was different? Boy, do we always appreciate our volunteers. Boy, do you appreciate it when they're not there. So in that picture is one of our premier volunteers, Judy. If I was better at pronouncing indefatigable, that I would use that more to describe Judy. She is relentless. You know, at one point in there, I think we even said, okay, we gotta start suspending things, especially for people who are 65 and older. And I hope I'm not giving away any secrets. And we had people who said, no, I'll be there period, right? You can't tell me I can't, right? So I'm going to show up, and people like Judy just show up at multiple sites at multiple times to help out however they can. But where we saw, here's a year-on-year comparison. Last year, we saw 25,000 volunteer hours delivered by over 1,600 volunteers. Well, those numbers were cut in half this year, right? And in the worst of times, and appropriately so, as people stayed away and stayed home as we were learning what COVID was, you know, we had 9 out of 10 volunteer spots go empty. We serve multiple meals at multiple shelters every single day. That was a stretch on everybody, on staff, on clients, to figure out how to make that happen. So what was one thing that was different was volunteerism is a huge part of our service delivery model, and that went away for a while. And fortunately now it's coming back with vaccinations, and as people get more comfortable, we're getting back to pre-COVID level on some of our volunteerism. We had unique challenges, you know, if you're experienced, we all had unique COVID challenges over the last year, no doubt. It's been a unique year for everybody. It is especially unique if you are a person without a place to call home during that time. If you're a person who is used to being out and about, and now all of a sudden there is no place you can go, there is no place you can rest, there is maybe no place you can go to the bathroom, and some of that becomes now, well, you can come here to Pillars and Shelter and Hotel, and that's the only place. That's got a level of stressors into itself. Moving into a hotel sounds easy and great, but you know, but in that case, when we did it, and you have a roommate, and now you have a built-in relationship, and you've got to manage all of that. Those are unique challenges. Just being out and being more seen. One of the things that we know is summertime. We had more people, more citizens, more everybody out and about, walking around and in the parks, and that makes it all the more obvious and observed of people who are experiencing homelessness, and that got heightened as well. So there are a lot of unique things to our world and the clients that we're working with. And through it all, we continue to make progress. So some of the enhancements that we had, we know case management is important. We added a case manager at the adult shelter. I showed you the bunk beds earlier. We added bunk beds for both safety and health reasons, as well as kind of respect and dignity reasons and progress reasons. We have a program called single room occupancy, which is our ability to move people out of shelter, singles, and into a group living situation with case management support. Just as COVID started, we opened our second single room occupancy, and although it's technically outside of 2020 annual report, last month we opened a third room for that. So that gives us on that spectrum of services we have, that's on that housing side where we have more output to a shelter experience and progress towards independence. And we started up a program with Theta Care Behavioral Health because they were running into issues of people who had behavioral health challenges who didn't necessarily have a place to go after completing that process. So we put a bridge program in place to do that. So through all of this, it was not just holding on and deliver the mission. There were some great opportunities and support from the community to be able to enhance what we're doing as well. Now, what was the same? Well, I'll start with the more things change, the more they stay the same. As much as COVID changed everything in the world, our work didn't always change that much. And by way of one data point of comparison, the chart that you see here, there's two lines. There's a darker gray line and a black line. The darker gray line, and what this shows is the percentage of clients we served in shelter, and how many are there are, you can see on the x-axis, a week or less. 1 to 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, 1 to 2 months, and so on. And we laid this over and said, so what happened this year? What was the big impact of COVID on our clientele? And you lay those two lines on the top of each other and it looks pretty much the same. We had 30% of the people were with us for less than a week, and 20% of the people were with us for about a month or two, and it is remarkably the same. And some of the needs were remarkably the same. That environment, that external environment changed in terms of what can I do and what's my opportunity for employment. But some of the fundamentals of how people first experience homelessness and how that gets resolved, and knowing that so much of that is within families and the social safety net that somebody has individually, just a reminder, not all of that has changed. We know that shelter is that critical first step to get in and get connected to services and start that continuum of services that I described. We know that case management is the key to progress, right? Which is why we added that case manager at the adult shelter, to be able to provide more resources to help people move through this experience of homelessness. We know that this thing called housing first is more true than ever. The need to have a foundation in place of safe, stable, affordable housing is more important than ever, and more difficult than ever as well in a world in which everything stops, and as good as eviction moratoriums are, right, that really locks up our entire housing system. So output from shelter is a little tougher, but we know that without that, it's hard to make the kind of lasting, sustainable progress. And in the other one, if we move to the next slide, just a reminder, people are amazing. So this is just one little example of that. These are 3 people who are in one of those single room occupancy programs for us, and decided as part of that they wanted to give back. So what did they do? They came to the adult and family shelter and decided to serve a meal. So these are individuals who had been in shelter, understood that experience, are now moved on to that next step, working with the case manager and starting to put things together with people now thinking about, I have employment in place, I'm saving money, I'm thinking about home ownership and family reunification and all of those great things that we want to see. And what's their way of celebrating that? Showing up, being there to volunteer and serve other people who are in the same spot. So it's been a year of very touching stories of a seemingly endless desire to give back. So let me hit one more slide, 2 more slides, and then pass it on. So here's the question. I thought this was worth touching on as well. So we all get the question on it. So how are you holding up? How are you holding up? How's your team? How are you guys doing? And putting this slide up, I went back to the lyrics of, if anybody, there's a Matthew West song that's out there right now, and the chorus starts with, I say I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine, oh, I'm fine, hey, I'm fine, but I'm not. So this Carlin picture, thumbs up, and Carlin is always fine and has done amazing things over the last year to be able to support our clients in any way possible, stepped up way beyond what would have ever been expected. So this is just a chance to reflect and say, it's been a tough year. Just to be honest, it has been a tough year. So certainly the uncertainty that's out there, the decision-making in the midst of uncertainty. What is COVID? What should we do? Mask or not mask? Oh my goodness, right? We went through that debate like everybody else. What is the right level of precaution? What is really the best way to be safe? And all of that, the decision-making, it gets really pure down to, can we staff this operation going forward? Because that is job one, is to keep the mission going. So that was tough. You know, the COVID impact on our team and our clients, just to make sure that I don't get it wrong. Let me check my stats on this. So 75% of the Pillars team has missed some work over the last year because of COVID. We've had 20 employees test positive for COVID and other exposures. So that goes to isolation and quarantine and flexing staff from place to place to be able to make sure that we can fill our spots and continue to serve. For clients, daily health checks, monitoring of symptoms and things like that. There have been 115 times over the last year that we have had to take some extra action to isolate or quarantine clients who were tested positive or exposed. So, and every one of those is a bit of a scramble, and every one of them that is a worry of one person, you know, as you know, as one person goes out, right, then you have potential exposures, and you start moving pieces 3, 4, 5, 6 at a time, and trying to cover for those. And the gaps on that is, you know, maybe a week to 14 days if we don't have somebody, we don't have them available. We put special procedures in place to be able to appropriately work through quarantine as needed. Fortunately, we only had to do that about 2 or 3 times. through it all, right, team members turnover because of COVID and for other reasons. So in the last year, we've had 30 employees leave Pillars. Probably about a quarter of those, I would say, are COVID related in some way, and others are retirements and move to another town and go back to school and all of those kind of things. Most of them good, healthy things, but that's a stress on the organization as well. And in that, there's also leadership changes. So we've had a leadership team that has had a dynamic year for sure. And if we take a peek at the next slide, then you'll see that leadership team again. And I thought there we go. Oh, those, okay. So I think you click ahead a couple times, Lisa, but what we did is we added some stars here for these are people who, and one more, people who were not here, not in their role a year ago. So we've had a very dynamic year for leadership of making sure that we had the right people and that we covered absences and that we took care of our team during those absences. So now this is a heck of a team. This is my dream team for sure, to be able to have the right people in the right spot and know what needs to get done and have kind of proven over the last year that they have got the wherewithal to get that done. So I couldn't be happier with this slide, and I couldn't be happier to be at this point in creating the slide as opposed to any time during the next year where there were a lot of moving pieces here. So that's our quick year in review. That's a little bit about Pillars and who we are and what we delivered and all of that, but it's not just about us, of course. It is about some of the great things that happen, and we've got some awards that we want to give out, and Karen Schrader is going to kick off that part of the program. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, and I just want to echo how awesome the leadership team is here at Pillars across our staff team, and every day it makes me as a board member find it easier to work with a great team that I know that we can count on them and get it done. So hi everybody, I'm Karen Schrader. I am an innovation manager at Yogyo to Grow, and I'm a Pillars board member. I chair our community engagement team, and I'm lucky enough to work with a fellow board member named Melissa Jacobs, along with a volunteer named Scott Jensen, and 6 of our staff members, all part of that community engagement team. So our real job is to draw you guys into everything that we do, into being part of our mission, whether that's volunteering or you know, with your time and talent or with a donation financially. And it's really exciting because every year we find people that just embody our values and elevate our mission, and it comes together so seamlessly, and how you as a community member help us do our work. And we really want to give these people special recognition. So we've definitely heard from Joe. We had quite the year last year, and it takes some special partners to be able to help us get through that type of year and really provide that shelter support and solutions that we need. So we do have 3 recognitions we'd like to do today. The first one is a volunteer of the year. The second one is a community partner of the year. And the third one is a special community partner. With that, Tony is going to take us into learning about our first volunteer of the year award.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, Karen, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. This year's Volunteer of the Year Award recognizes a husband and a wife. They've been supporters of Pillars for many years, but really within the last year, they've become what I like to say the epitome of selfless volunteers. Mel and Mike Myland. They stepped up to serve guests at shelter when very few people would. They felt comfortable doing so when a lot of folks didn't, and for their own credit too, it was a tough year. In April of 2020, the Mylands began serving dinners on a regular basis and are now still providing meals a few times a week. Sometimes they're there for 7 days in a row, and other times we have volunteers there for a week that gives Mike and Mel some time off. Mel can be found training new volunteers and assisting with daily odds and ends when she's not serving a meal. And when Mike's not serving a meal, he's usually helping with maintenance needs and repair jobs once dinner and all the clients are taken care of. In 2020, the Mylans served 328 volunteer hours, serving over 80 dinners and providing over 5,000 individual meals to guests in shelter. It's a common occurrence when the Mylans aren't signed up for guests to ask about their well-being because they're so used to having Mike and Mel there and around during dinner time. I mean, they even spent time on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day serving lunch and dinner to the guests who didn't have family or anywhere else to go to. So it is my honor on behalf of Pillars, on behalf of the Adult Shelter team, to recognize Mel and Mike Mylan for the 2020 Pillars Volunteer of the Year Award, not only because of their commitment to selflessly serving others, but also because of their enthusiasm and the impact they make on other volunteers, new folks coming in to join the team, and for spreading the joy of service around in the community. Mel, of course, is serving others at her day job, but we were able to steal Mike for a few moments. So Mike, if you have it nearby, we'd love to see the award. And if you have a few words, we'd love to hear from you, Mike.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Here's the award that Tony was able to get to Melanie yesterday at the Veterans Administration Clinic. She's there right now serving patients and not able to join us this morning. So thank you, Tony. Wow. We're honored to be selected as the Pillars Volunteers of the Year. We've made volunteering a big part of our lives, and we do other volunteer work in the community. Specifically, Melanie works also at the Clothes Closet, and I've spent a lot of time working with the Scouts, the Bay Lakes Council Boy Scouts of America. And we primarily do those things individually, although we support each other in those endeavors. Pillars is something we do together. And so that is something that brings us joy, and we try to bring joy to others. Melanie would say we are living our assignment. We're glad to be part of the community that cares for everyone. Thank you to Lauren and all the staff at the adult shelter. And thank you to all of the other volunteers who help Pillars deliver on their mission. I invite you to join us either at the adult shelter or the others in volunteering. So when you're comfortable being there in person, you can help serve meals. And if not, another way to provide help is to sign up for dinners and lunches. We're serving lunches on Saturday and Sunday through April yet. And I think Tony's already put in the link or in the chat a link to sign up for volunteering. So again, thank you again for this recognition, and have a great day.
Okay, I'll take it over from here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. Okay. My name is Lauren Moan. I'm the shelter manager at the Pillars Adult Shelter. I would like to take a few minutes to speak about and recognize one of our outstanding community partners. Last year in late March, Pillars, like everyone else, was scrambling to come up with a plan to keep our clients, staff, and volunteers safe when the pandemic hit. Through the initial phases, we put our heads together and started contacting local entities to look into alternatives for our folks in shelter. When it seemed like our options were dwindling, that's when we stumbled across our saving grace, Linda and the Clarion team. In about 24 hours, we put a plan together to transition 100 single adults experiencing homelessness from our two shelters to the Clarion Hotel a few miles down the road for the next 90 days. This, of course, included all shelter operations. So as you can imagine, that was a huge move. That's staff, volunteers, meals, laundry, all basic needs, supplies, etc. This move allowed us to safely distance and keep everyone safe when everything and everyone was so uncertain. Linda welcomed us with open arms, ready to take on a challenge I think we all underestimated. She worked with us as policies, procedures, and rules continuously changed, not only within Pillars, but our community, all the late night phone calls, and even later nights, long hours, quarantines and isolations, all the good days, but especially the bad. We learned together, we grew together, we overcame together. Pillar staff learned how to be a hotel concierge, and her staff learned to work with people with some severe barriers and to open their minds to the stereotypes of homelessness. The move to the Clarion pulled our Pillars team closer together than we could ever imagine, and you were a huge part of that, Linda. After we moved our operations back into shelter on July 1st, Linda and her team continued to support us through the next 9 months. More isolations, more quarantines, more calls and late nights. Through these 9 months, we successfully isolated and or quarantined over 150 individuals on separate occasions. This number also included a few smaller programs, like Joe mentioned, to assist in housing other folks experiencing homelessness in from our community partners. We will forever be grateful for the year of dedication, compassion, and love you gave to our Pillars, and the clients we serve, Linda. You really went above and beyond, and your compassion is truly unmatched. Always be a member of our Pillars team, and that is one of the reasons why we want to present you with the Community Partner of the Year award. Thank you again. We truly, words cannot express how grateful we are for you. Now I will, go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. That was so nice.
I'm trying not to cry, sorry.
I know, me too. I just want to say, Lauren, it has been such an honor working with you and Joe and your team over the last year. You and your staff, you guys are truly remarkable. My team and I would like to thank you and your team for teaching us that humility and compassion along the way, over this year. It's really been eye-opening. We all feel like better people just from working alongside of you and your team. And I know that while the Clarion is no longer being used, each of us have looked inside ourselves, and we know that there's still a need out in the community, and so each of us have made it a thing that we are going to continue our own personal journeys by making sure that we give back into the community. And most of us, before you guys came, we didn't know the extent of the homelessness or the community need that was out there, and now we do. It was such an eye-opener for us, and we really look forward to continuing our personal journeys, and it's because we worked with you guys. And again, it was such an eye-opening and humbling experience, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Mike and Mel. It's been an exceptional year. You've been exceptional people. And because it's been an exceptional year, we have an exceptional award to present. And I, as a Community Engagement Director, have the honor of presenting it. This award recognizes incredible generosity, remarkable responsiveness, and great creativity in meeting the needs of those experiencing homelessness here in the Fox Cities. The recipient has gone above and beyond in generosity, responsiveness, and creativity, not just for Pillars clients, but for all of those that COVID has made more vulnerable. Our Special Community Partner Award goes to all of you, everyone, the people of the Fox Cities. We really wanted to emphasize to you that you all of you are part of the Pillars team. And during what has been an exceptional year, you, your neighbors, your coworkers, your fellow faith community members, even your children have found so many ways to shine a light in a dark time. You gave money, you gave hygiene items, you held safe, socially distanced outdoor events to benefit Pillars clients. You took your wee ones shopping with your stimulus check and bought diapers and laundry baskets and cleaning supplies. Everyone from the Green Bay Packers to the Fox Valley Browns backers came together to carry out our mission and to carry our clients through the pandemic. You acted just like the incredible community you are, and we thank and applaud you, every last one of you. Congratulations, Fox Cityans.
Okay, back to me for my postscript that I want to talk about, but I just have to, well done, Lisa, and to the community. You know, we talk all the time about we Pillars, we only exist because the community cares about this work. We only exist because as a community, we care about those people who are struggling in some way and struggling specifically with a place to call home. The work, it can't be done without that kind of community support. I think that is totally appropriate for us to community at large express that appreciation, because it's there's too many people. You'd miss somebody and it's inadequate to try and single out anybody else. So thank you. That is really tremendous. I asked for a moment to do a little merger postscript on this, and I'll ask a little bit of your indulgence on this. A lot of people on this call have been here since before October of 2018, when we merged 3 agencies, the Fox Valley Warming Shelter, Homeless Connections, and the Housing Partnership of the Fox Cities together. And a lot of you know, for a couple of years before that, we talked about it and figured out if we could do it and how would do it and why. But I wanted to reflect on that for a moment in light of what this last year has been. So when we started, we said, and pretty consistently, we said we have 3 goals with this merger of agencies, which we knew was unusual and challenging and would have its share of bumps in the road. So if we look at the next slide, we said from the beginning, we want to do 3 things. If we cannot improve client outcomes, there's no point. And client outcomes for that is connecting with people who are unsheltered homeless and being able to connect with services and get people into shelter and start working through that in a productive way so that this episode of homelessness becomes their last episode of homelessness. And making sure that we can measure over time how well we do with people taking that next step and maintaining that next step. And when we have people in housing programs, how well are we doing with that experience and the ability to then continue to increase your household income and work towards a level of independence. Everything was about, is this better for the clients? The second thing we said, the goal of the merger, was to enhance our engagement with the community, to make sure that we could do that everything that Lisa just talked about, that we could be that focal point for the community to endorse and participate in this kind of work. And then to build a stronger, more sustainable organization so that we were here for the long term and could, knowing that this is probably, these are not temporary issues that we're seeing and experiencing now, but we need to be able to be prepared for this for a while. So those were the goals of our merger. I think you've seen some things on client outcomes in a year of COVID, how we continue to serve our clients, continue to keep our doors open, continue to offer services. And I think over the last year, the community's ability to now say, how do I help? And to be able to go to one place to do that instead of 3, to wonder about how are 3 working together. And so now there was, and the community response was amazing, wonderful, saying, how can I help in every way that Lisa mentioned. And there was one place, so I think we streamlined that and we made it easier to get from desire to help to that actually translating to direct service to a client. But what I was hoping for, if you'll indulge me, to talk just a little bit about building a stronger, more sustainable organization. So my what set up for this is before I got into the nonprofit world. I spent 29 years in at Kimberly-Clark and at Plexus, and almost all of those 29 years were in human resources. So this third goal for me was always a big one, because that was my career, was looking at how do you build stronger, more sustainable organizations. So humor me for a second. I know I got at least one guy on the call with us that I used to work with in a HR capacity. So if nobody else, Dave, this is for you, right? I think you'll understand some of this, but I think the rest will as well. So here's our formula. Here's what we were thinking about when we said, what does a pillars give us? And this is not necessarily very pretty, but just work with me from the top down. This is good management theory and human resources practice. Is when you have some organizational size, when you increase in size, and we had a lot of debates about how big is too big and how small is too small when we talked about the merger, but two big things fall out of a larger organization. One is with more people, you're allowed to specialize. You specialize your skills more because you have more people to assign to specific tasks. And you have greater depth in your staffing. So when things happen, when people leave or get sick, you have the ability to cover. You have ability to cover for vacations and for maternity leave and for resignations and all of that. So size gives, if you do it right, it allows you to specialize your work, and it allows you to have some greater resources to bring to bear to the needs of the organization, and for us, for the community. And then what happens, so what does specialization lead to? Specialization leads to improvement. When you can specialize in your work and you can focus, you get better. You get better faster in that world than if you're spread too thin over too many things. And what depth does, that ability to have more team members available, it ensures continuity of service. So now we've got an environment there where we're getting better, and we're able to deal with special challenges. And in the end, that's that third promise we made with the merger, is a strong, sustainable organization. So now an organization of almost 70 people allows us to specialize in virtually all aspects of it, whether that is specializing in case management or day-to-day client advocacy or leadership in any respect. And it's allowed us to respond to the last year. So I wanted to maybe make that a little more obvious. I think the year that was 2020 was our test of that. And did we prepare the organization for that? And when I think about the things that we told you today, this is maybe one of the greatest benefits of the merger that we foresaw back in 2018. When we talk about the need to pivot the entire operation and move to a hotel and figure out how to do that, and to have a leader who could make that happen and oversee it, and to be able to flex our staff and take our resource center staff and all hands on deck, people from the main office, to be able to go and support that operation to make sure that it was that it worked well, was incredible. And then when we moved back, right, we moved back to normal operations. And then as COVID comes and goes up and down and all of that, there are times where we said, okay, we're getting shorthanded because of those employees that need to be out of work for a while. So what can we do? And then we would flex our resource center staff and shut down resource center and move those operations to the adult shelter. And we would move those to a 24/7 operation until we got through that and we had the staff to move back, and then we moved back. And again, it was that continuity of service we were able to provide, as well as specialization, so people could train each other on how to do it. And then December came and COVID spiked again. And we talked about bed nights in December alone. With clients being quarantined or isolated, we had almost 400 bed nights at the hotel. And again, we had to pivot the organization, and we had to have enough expertise in every place to keep it going, and enough depth to be able to spread our resources around. And then cold weather came, and we realized there is still no place open on Saturday and Sunday for people to go that might have been there in the past. So we pivoted and we said, we'll do a 24/7 Saturday, Sunday operation at our adult shelter. And what do you need to do for that? You need resources. We need to be able to share now shelter client advocates, our first line resource between our adult and family shelter on Division Street and our adult shelter on College Avenue. And we need to tap into the entire organization. So that's that third goal, which we didn't talk about as much because it takes this kind of time to talk about. But I think what we saw over the last year, and I'm really grateful that it's come to fruition, because where we want to be is strong and sustainable so that we can serve this community in the very best way. And the last thing I'll note there is the next slide is where this is more visible maybe than anywhere else. It's reflective of the organization, is going back to this leadership team. So this is a very well developed leadership team. So you can see two things here that I just talked about. You could see specialization of work. Everybody has an area to focus on that they are optimizing and continuing to improve and make better. And we've got some depth to be able to share resources when need be across areas. And it's a team that works very well together to be able to understand client comes first. We're here to serve the community, and we're here to deliver on our mission every single day. So my last comment on our leadership team, again, I could not be happier to be working with these fine people in the organization we have to deliver our services to this community. So that's big. That's the organization writ large right there. But it all comes down to the client. It all comes down to who do we serve. So we put together a little video here to talk about somebody who we've had experience with over the last couple of years, who on that, going back to our, what's sitting in your mailbox, hopefully, and this broad continuum of services, somebody who's made their way through a number of these, and it's a great way to tell Sarah's story while at the same time telling the Pillars story of how we were able to support her. So Lisa, roll the film.
Lisa's experiencing some frustration with the film, unfortunately. Oh, here we go.
There we go. That looks good.
Sarah was around for a little bit in like the community. She's originally from like Hilbert. So when her and her husband were planning a family, they migrated towards Appleton. They have 5 kids together. Before they entered shelter, they were actually living outside. They were doing kind of like a camping experience with their kids because they had nowhere to really go. Their relationship with their parents, it's solid, but it wasn't to the point where they felt comfortable being like, hey, like, can we stay here? They knew that was going to be a lot coming in with a family of 7. So they decided to live outside for a while. And then once that got to be too much, then they had entered shelter. Sarah and her kids were only in shelter for about 4 or 5 months, which is the perfect thing with the TBRA program because it's not for people who experience homelessness for an extended period of time. It's just to kind of get their footing. TBRA is considered, it is tenant-based rental assistance. It's a collaboration with Appleton Housing Authority. It's one of those stepping stones to getting a Section 8 voucher because we know how important it is for people to be able to afford their rents. So when they graduate successfully and they get their Section 8 voucher, what it is a 30% of their income. So if their income is $900, they'll be paying $300 towards rent. She was used to being a stay-at-home mom. So for her now to be solely responsible for the kids and, you know, gaining income, because that is a requirement for programming, steady jobs, and worrying about schools where the kids were. When she first entered programming, her kids were actually living with her parents in Hilbert. So that way it gave her a little time to get everything situated, to kind of get her mind right, because her husband did stay in shelter. I think it's a support. You know, Sarah's one of those people where she could conquer the world, but it's just about her having confidence in herself to be able to do that. And everything is super overwhelming at this point. You know, she's going from living outside to shelter to now on her own for the first time in her adult life, and now with her kids. So the biggest thing that she really needed was support. She needed someone in her corner to say, hey, you got this. Like, how can we connect you with resources? How can we connect you with counseling? How do we get your kids back and make it, you know, as easy of a transition as we possibly can? And she just took everything and ran with it. She got a job. You know, she slowly started to integrate her kids back, where it wasn't just the weekends that they're coming back, but maybe, you know, a day during the week. And then just started to gain more and more confidence in herself that she could do it.
And she was living in one of our affordable housing units. And when she graduated from the program, we had another unit open because the current tenants bought a house. And this new house was a better fit for her and her family. This was a 3-bedroom instead of a 2-bedroom with a yard. For someone to go through the whole continuum, they need to show that they are a good tenant, that they can pay their rent, that they do take care of the property. Sarah managed to do all that. We had a couple bumps along the way, but we used those as a learning curve. And when she moved out of her first unit, we were so impressed with the way she left it. She cleaned it perfectly. She fixed things that were broken, and we're just very excited to have her now as an affordable tenant in a new house.
This is the reason why I do the job that I do. You know, it's just to see someone go from not knowing who they are, not having the confidence in themselves to be like, hey, this is what I got to do and I can do it, to being like, I'm working full time. She's gotten promotions. Her kids are all enrolled in school and doing really well, extracurriculars, and now moving from programming into a home of her own, you know, still using through stable housing. That's not something that she saw 2 years ago. So it's to be a part of her journey and see her just take the reins and just go with it. It's been beautiful.
The merge has helped because when we need to make a warm handoff, we can go straight to the case manager that was working with them, or even at the shelter, we can talk to the individuals that work there. And instead of being a name in an email, there are coworkers, so we know them by face and by name, and it has allowed to have more of a personal touch.
It's helped a lot, I think, in just her, because her mindset is always still concerned with like what her husband is doing. And with him still being in shelter, like we could still provide a sense of he still being supported, and that gave her the know-how, or like the understanding that, okay, he's okay, so I can continue on. You know, that's always been a concern of hers, is how is he doing? So to be able to do that, she's still connected with people at shelter, which is great because it's building still a good support. And she knows that she has anywhere, you know, that she can go to our resource center, she can go to our shelters, and she can definitely come to main office and be like, hey, I'm in need. How can we help? The thing that's really helped Sarah throughout this whole thing is having a place that is affordable. And that's a big barrier that we're seeing with a lot of clients, are just getting them into places that they can afford and can be successful in. So the more community members and more landlords that we have that are willing to work with programming and are you know, starting to build in that 30% is huge. And we just need to kind of push as a community to understand the importance of having affordable housing. And so if we can start to gain that, I mean, we're getting more and more landlords, which is amazing. We just need to continue to grow. I don't think that this is our stopping point. This is our starting point.
That is what it is all about. So for as much as I say, oh, it was a tough year and we, you know, all of this stuff, that is the payoff. And the beautiful thing is we get not a story like that. That's pretty exceptional, but we get stories like that every week. Right? We get stories of achievement and grit and resilience and overcoming and making the most of what could be a low point. You know, I always say, right, we've all got a whole book, and book is only interesting if you have some chapters, right, that are about the struggle and some chapters are about the victory. And we're happy to be arm in arm with people on those chapters that are the struggle, and be able to turn that into the kind of victory that you saw there with Sarah. And we've got so many people every day who are doing their best to make that step and move forward. And I think what you can see is how much it takes, because even with that, it takes a while, right? You don't end up getting to that low point overnight usually, and you don't work your way out of it overnight. It takes a team. Our case managers in particular, Paige in that example, but it applies to all of us. You know, they identify themselves as having 5 roles of being a case manager. You know, some days you're an advocate, some days you're a coach, some days you're a supporter, some days you're a connector, all days you're an appreciator. And they have to flex that to make sure that we understand what are the needs of this person and this family and how do we move them forward. And the other thing I just want to point, only because it gets me every time, there's a little clip in there. I've got it, Lisa, I need one of these in my office. That Heroes Work Here sign looks just worn out and weathered and beaten. If you look at it, it has been knocked over and out in the wind and the snow and the rain, and it is still standing. Heroes Work Here, and that applies to Sarah and our team. So we are maybe a little worse for the wear, but we're still here, we're working, and we're going to keep doing this. So with that, we'll start wrapping up, and Lisa's going to talk about some things that are coming up from a community standpoint. How do we continue to engage? How do you opt into Pillars and what we're doing? You can see I did a little early April Fools on this one last night before Lisa had a chance to change anything. I put a little Lisa the Riveter icon on here because, yeah, we can do it, and Lisa's going to tell you how.
He knows me too well. Joe talked earlier about the depth and specialization of our team here at Pillars, and I want to talk just a little bit about the depth and specialization of my team here at Pillars, the community engagement team. They're also your team here at Pillars, which is why we wanted to take a minute to introduce them to you. These are the folks with whom you are drawn closer to the mission of Pillars. And you'll see here too that we have a lot of stars on this team as well, a lot of new faces that joined us during the course of the pandemic. I'm going to add another star here, myself and of course Lisa Geiger, who's been with us for a time but has changed roles within our team. So we've really built some specialization. These are the folks that are working hard behind the scenes right at this very moment. You don't see them, but they are hard at work making things happen. So check in with these folks as you need to connect with Pillars. Joe has mentioned that you should be watching your mail. Our annual report may have arrived yesterday, mine did. So be watching for this. You can read it online at pillarsinc.org. And also, if you need extra copies, please email Ayanda Crispin, who you met at the start of the program, at events@pillarsinc.org to get extra print copies if that's a need. Lastly, this doesn't need to be the end of our conversation, our report out to you. You can hear from us multiple times a week on social media. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, we are in all of those places. We hope you will find us there. We also host conversations over coffee every other month, and in fact have one next week, April 8th, focused on our Ascend program. So look for conversations over coffee on the Pillars website and join us, and you'll get a little dose of this every couple of months. Lastly, when you leave the webinar today, in your browser window, there will be a link to a survey. It's 3 questions long. It will take you less than 30 seconds to respond. We hope you will. And we hope that you found today informative. And I will hand it to Board President Tom Wieser to close us out.
Oh, Tom, I believe you're muted. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. I didn't think I had muted. So once again, thank you, Lisa, and the entire team. What an amazing presentation today. I very much appreciate the hard work you've all put into this. As the board president, I get the privilege of thanking each and every one of you, the donors, funders, community partners, volunteers, board, and staff. That's quite a large number of people who work hard to bring this all together. Thank you for all that you do to provide shelter, support, and solutions to address our housing needs in our community. And thank you for believing and investing in our clients. As Joe outlined today, we're in our third year as Pillars from 3 distinct volunteer agencies and merging into one. I think today we did a fine job of showcasing the strength and the ability to bring those 3 organizations together and be much stronger. As a member of healthcare, I know the impact of this pandemic, and I don't think it's too big of a point to note that across the country, homeless shelters have been a starting point of significant outbreaks and deaths in communities. And although we sheltered and quarantined several, I'm pretty confident we were protective of not only our residents and our staff, but of the community through the nimble and unique approach of this leadership team. Having been on this board for 8 years, I am so proud to see the evolution of where we started and where we came, to see a vision that started with, we think we can be stronger across the community if we took these talents and shared them between the organizations, and actually see it in practice this last year has been very rewarding to me as a board member and a member of the community. So we look forward to a brighter, easier, and healthier 2021, we hope. And we thank you in advance for staying at our side and for the year ahead. And please take a moment to complete our survey and enjoy your day. And please connect with us soon. Thank you.